Humans of the cardboard. Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. I'm really excited to do this discussion video today. This is something that I've kind of been thinking about for a while. And I just want to do an overall discussion, breaking it down. And the discussion we're talking about today is how many archetypes is too many archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! We have a ginormous amount. I mean, I'm on Yugipedia right now, and it says that we have about 663 archetypes here, which is, you know, crazy. I mean, obviously this is weird. Like, if you scroll down right here, like, they're kind of just categorizing any card that, any grouping of cards that share the same name, really. Not even necessarily that actually embody a full-on archetype. Because as you can see, there's, like, Wingman. It's not really an archetype. It's just part of Elemental Hero. Weisel Attack, Weisel Guard, Weisel Top, all just kind of part of Mech Lords. There's just a bunch free there. So this number is probably closer to actually 400, 300, 400, somewhere in there. But it still begs the question, like, we have so many archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! So many bad archetypes that are not necessarily just bad for modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! That maybe had a chance back in their day, but haven't got support in a while. We see Konami tries to do their best to give legacy support. So where is the balance as far as how many new archetypes should we be getting every year? Because eventually we're going to hit 1,000 legit archetypes if this game keeps going on. And like, when do you sit down and say, like, okay, we have too much? All we should be doing is updating the 1,000 archetypes we have here. So it's a really weird question, but yeah, let's go through it and talk about at least this past year and where we normally see new archetypes and break that down. So there's really three main categories that we ever get new archetypes in as far as products go. There are core sets, there are deck build packs, and there are side sets, like other side, like booster sets that could have new archetypes in them. So going over the last year, starting off with the first category, core sets, you have Battle of Chaos. This had Dinomorphia and Libromancer. That's a really interesting thing to note as well, because as we pertain to the TCG, we get a new, we've been on this trend where we get a new TCG exclusive archetype every other core set, right? We get the first wave, that's the initial release. We get a second wave in the next set, and then we move on to a new one. So 2 TCG exclusive archetypes guaranteed every year, at least for the last couple while we've been on this trend. So that would be Libromancer here, and then Dinomorphia being the standard new one. From there, we moved to Dimension Force, had Therion and Scareclaw in their core set, so 2 more archetypes there. That's 2 for the first 2. Then we get to Power of the Elements, which featured Sprite, Tearlament, Vernalizer Fairy, and Goatee as the next TCG exclusive archetype. This core set had 4 brand new archetypes in it. That's insane to me, but hey, it is what it is. 4 new archetypes in one set. That's crazy. So that's 8 just from the first 3. And then we moved to the final one, Darkwing Blast, which had Kashtira and Bestial. That's another thing that's kind of weird is, even though you would look at Kashtira and say, oh, that first wave, that's just an engine. That's all it is. We saw the second wave in Photon Hypernova. I'm counting as a full-on archetype. And there are some weird ones that are kind of smaller or just kind of packages, but they do share the same name. They do have some synergistic factors where they search each other or whatever, so I'm going to count them. So yeah, that's 10 just from core sets, so that's a lot. Moving on, we have the deck build packs, and this whole set is featured around brand new archetypes. You get 3 new archetypes in every deck build pack. We had Grand Creators at the beginning of the year that had Exosister, Adventure, and Punk. By the way, I thought this set was going to be ass when it came out, but it ended up being one of the best deck build packs ever. Like, all 3 of these archetypes ended up being, like, super meta relevant, which is crazy. Then we got Tactical Masters way later in the year. That featured Runic, Labyrinth, and Valance. So 6 more there. That's 16 total. And then we move to the side sets. We don't really get, by the way, we don't really get structure decks that feature brand new archetypes. So that's just something to note. That's just not really a thing. Usually it's support more than anything. I guess we saw Salamangrate, which technically featured a set before, but it wasn't even really an archetype at that point. But outside of, like, very specific cases like that, yeah, not so much. So we move to Magnificent Mavens. This is another weird one as well. I'm going to count the Ishizu Fairies as an archetype. They weren't really an archetype before. None of their cards had any synergy before. They were just part of Ishizu's deck in the anime, but they don't do anything synergistic. this is the initial release of like an actual cohesive engine package archetype, whatever you want to call it, that actually like has synergy with each other. So I'm going to count that. That's the only thing there. And then we move to the final set here. Battles of Legend, Crystal's Revenge. This is pretty much where we import all of the Animation Chronicle cards from the OCG. So these are pretty much just all cards that existed either in the manga or the anime, and that we actually import over here finally. So pretty cool here. The only things to note of here, which is actually interesting, G-Golem, definitely a new archetype. They got a handful of cards from G-Golem, bunch of extra deck cards, which is cool. Doodle Beast, this is one where you're like, kind of on the border, because it's like 3 cards, but they search each other. They already have synergy with dinosaurs. Like, okay, we'll count it. And then Advanced Crystal Beast is the last one, which again, you could just say that's more Crystal Beast cards, but they all share names, and I believe they have some cards that only mess with Advanced Crystal Beast cards, and so for that, we'll count them as their own archetype for that reason, which gives us a grand total of 18 to 20. If you don't count Doodle Beast and Advanced Crystal Beast, it'd be 18. If you do, it's 20. That still feels like a lot. I mean, just on average, we're getting over an archetype and 2/3 every month on average. I mean, obviously they're getting clustered together, stuff like Power of the Elements with 4 all at once, or just months where we had 2 products come out at the same time, get 5 archetypes in the same month, like stuff like that. But yeah, on average, that feels like a lot, especially for a game where we have so many archetypes already, so many archetypes that are lagging behind and deserve support to kind of keep them up with the times. And it's stuff where, like, over a course of a couple of years, you probably need to go back and revisit them, even after you've done them in the last couple of years, because, you know, you got to keep them fresh, and then power creep will kind of drown them out if you know, pretty quickly. One more thing to note as far as the new archetypes go, shout out to Konami. I think they've been doing a really good job as far as making archetypes, not just new archetypes, but archetypes that are cool and exciting for competitive players to a degree. As you see here, we have tier 0 decks, like obviously tier, but then top tier stuff. These are 7 of the 20 new archetypes that ended up being very relevant in top tier Yu-Gi-Oh! Solid Rogue, most of this stuff ends up falling into that category, like could be played in a Rogue deck and have some success. And then Meh, you know, these are Meh and Dookie. Advanced Crystal Beast cards, they seem really, really bad. I know Crystal Beast got their structure deck, which kind of helps these a little bit, but as far as they go, they're not great cards. And then Goatee, Doodle Beast, and Valiance have really yet to show much of anything in the TCG. So, but by the way, shout out to Konami just for making these new archetypes pretty good overall. I love that most of them are clustered around that Rogue level to top tier. That's exactly where we want to be. So it feels like these new archetypes are impactful as far as being relevant to the overall you know, metagame, because obviously we like it when that gets updated. Just a shout out on that. So here is my proposal, right? My proposal is to just kind of set a precedent, right? I don't like, well, you know, to be fair, the precedent isn't too far off as far as the core sets go, right? 2 new archetypes in Battle of Chaos, 2 in Dimension Force, 2 in Darkwing Blast, and then we just have the 1 Power of the Elements where they just went crazy with 4. My precedent that I think seems fair would just be, because we've also had core sets where there's literally no new archetypes in them. Trust me, it's happened where there's just none. It's in like an all support set, and they're not terrible all the time, but you know, they do feel like they lack something. I don't want any of those, but I also don't want 4 new archetypes in a new set. So my recommendation to Konami would be like, hey, every single one of these core sets, 1 new archetype. Hear me out. That sounds like, John, what? Come on, that's too much. I say 1 new archetype, but also like as far as the regular part of the set goes for core sets, and then keep doing what you're doing with the TCG exclusives. So technically, that would be 4 new archetypes, 1 for each of the core sets that we get in a year, and then we'd get 2 additional TCG exclusives. That would give us 6 instead of the 10 that we got this year. That would bump 4 new archetypes off of what we got. That would give more space in these core sets, because keep in mind, when most of these new archetypes come out, it's like 10 slots in these core sets. That is a lot of room to make room for 3 to 4 archetypal supports in there as well, or generic cards that could be cool. Like we've seen power creep for some generic cards in the game, like that makes a little bit of extra room for that. I totally don't think that's a huge issue. And then finally, So that would be 6 there. And then I think you leave the deck build packs alone. I like that we have those. It's only twice a year. I know you get, I know that's 6 whole archetypes throughout the whole year, but, you know, I think that's okay. I don't think that's too brutal. And then we get to the other side sets. Again, we get usually get 3 bigger side sets throughout the year. This year it was Magnificent Mavens, Battles of Legend, and earlier in the year we got the Ghost from the Past, the second Haunting, I believe. That one didn't have any new archetypes. I would say on average 1 in each of those, right? And then we come out to 15. I know it's only from 20 to 15, but that's just a little bit of recommendation. I think we could be okay by cutting back a little bit on how many new archetypes we release. But I don't know. There's also an argument that look at Bestial. Yeah, look at Ashizu Fairies. Look at Adventure. Yes, these are brand new archetypes, but it also seems like Konami wants to go in this direction of splashable engines, and they're not really their own decks. So it's not like we're just adding decks to the game. We're adding supplemental engines that can jump onto decks that already exist, make them better, stuff like that. So there is an argument that some of these, I wouldn't even necessarily just say these are full-on archetypes. They're engines, and maybe that makes them lesser so because they're not necessarily coming out as a whole new entity, really. They're just like a package. So I don't know. It's a really weird place to be. That's just my recommendation is cutting down to 1.5 archetypes per core set, and then doing, on average, 1 new archetype for the 3 main side sets we get throughout the year, stuff like that. And then from there, I think that's okay. Because, trust me, as someone who gets very excited for new archetypes, I get it. I get really excited for new archetypes. Sometimes it's the most exciting thing for me when a new set drops. It really is, but I do think for the overall health of the game, maybe there should be some reeling back. I don't know. I just kind of want to spark the discussion, give you some of my thoughts, go through kind of the data, at least from this past year, and I think the data looks pretty similar for the last couple of years as well, because they kind of been going with a lot of these same formulas. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me today, guys. So I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching as always. Let me know what you're thinking about just archetypes in general. Should Konami slow down? Should they speed up? Should they, cut it in half? Should they just stop entirely? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear where you guys are at there. But I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one from your boy down the line. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.